name is Heidi Shepherd. Thank you. How do homeless people stay warm outside during the winter? Each Tuesday, my dad and I spend time building relationships among the houseless population in downtown Kalamazoo. We have a friend named Doug who told us about a special way that keeps him warm when he stays outside during the winter. It contains the use of a candle and rubbing alcohol. This made me wonder if there might be a better fuel source that would help Doug save money. The world offers an abundance of fuel sources, too many to list. I finally decided to test rubbing alcohol, which Doug uses, vegetable oil, and kerosene, because they are all liquids, easily accessible, and inexpensive. So, my research question is, which fuel source between rubbing alcohol, vegetable oil, and kerosene, when absorbed in toilet paper and combusted in a glass bowl, would be the most cost efficient? In other words, which fuel source will burn at the lowest cost per minute? In order to decide upon my hypothesis, I had to answer 3 questions. What is combustion? What is fuel? And what is the cost of each fuel? In my research paper, we read the details which answer these 3 questions. But let me give you a brief summary. Combustion is burning. It happens when fuel, oxygen, and heat react with each other. There are many types of combustion, but for this experiment, I used diffusion combustion. Diffusion combustion takes place when a fuel and oxygen mix together at the border of the flame. All combustion requires fuel, but what is fuel? Fuel is any substance that releases chemical energy as heat when combined with oxygen and another heat source. Almost anything can be fuel. For example, toilet paper can be fuel. It can burn by itself, but it's a weak fuel source because it lacks density and contains plenty of oxygen, which is not flammable. A strong fuel will be jam-packed with combustible energy. Rubbing alcohol, vegetable oil, and kerosene are each reliable fuel sources. Now, since I must discover which fuel is the most cost-efficient, I researched the cost of each. This graph shows the cost per ounce for each fuel. Rubbing alcohol is most expensive, vegetable oil is least expensive, and kerosene is about 30% higher than vegetable oil. Keep in mind, it is possible for the most expensive fuel to also be the most cost efficient, and for the least expensive to be the least cost efficient. Ultimately, cost efficiency will be determined by comparing the cost of the fuel to the length of the burn. After my research, I formed my hypothesis, which is vegetable oil, when compared against rubbing alcohol and kerosene, with the most cost-efficient fuel source when used in a glass bowl with toilet paper. In other words, vegetable oil will burn at the lowest cost per minute. My experiment was rather simple. Each of the 9 tests were identical. The only difference was the fuel source. I tested each fuel 3 times. Allow me to show you. First, I placed a clean glass bowl onto a food scale. Then, I dropped 1 gram of toilet paper into the bowl. Next, I carefully poured 5 grams of a fuel onto the paper, making sure it was all absorbed by the paper. And now, the fire. It's worth noting that we worked in a highly ventilated area due to the dangers presented by fire and smoke. My father lit the paper, and I started the timer. The key to my experiment is the length of the burn. This graph shows the burn time in seconds for each fuel. Blue represents rubbing alcohol, green represents vegetable oil, and yellow represents kerosene. The first 3 bars for each fuel represent each of the tests, while the 4th bar shows the average of the 3. As you can see, vegetable oil burned the longest. After the experiment, I had to use math to convert the average burn time for 5 grams of fuel into what will be the burn time for 1 ounce of fuel. Also, I had to convert a time measured in seconds into times measured in minutes and hours. This graph shows that it would cost over 30 cents per hour to burn rubbing alcohol, just under 11 cents per hour to burn vegetable oil, and just over 1/4 per hour to burn kerosene. My hypothesis was that vegetable oil would be the most cost efficient because it had the lowest cost of the 3 tested fuels. My results supported my hypothesis, as not only did vegetable oil cost the least, but it also burnt the longest. And, drumroll please, the most cost-efficient fuel is vegetable oil. If I ever wanted to repeat my experiment, I would use different fuel sources and burning agents to learn if there are other fuels which are more cost-efficient than vegetable oil. Still, I can't wait to tell my homeless friend Doug about my experiment. Then he'll be able to save more money and stay warmer for a longer period of time. Thank you for listening. Do you have any questions?
Wow. First of all, your board is really beautiful.
Thank you.
It looks like you spent a lot of time doing that. So for homeless people, do they just have bowls available or they can make little fires? How does that work out in real
When
life?
we first were going to do this experiment, we were going to use an aluminum can, like beans and stuff. But then it lacks a lot of oxygen for the fuel, so it doesn't burn as easily and longer. So we decided to use a bowl instead.
Yeah, how would that work with the homeless? How would they actually, how would you give that to Doug, like a bowl?
Well,
And
probably not. And it also isn't very easy to travel with. So.
yeah. Did you run the experiment a couple of times to make sure that your results were consistent with the burn times?
Well, we did, like I said, we did each fuel. We tested each fuel 3 times.
Oh, you did? Okay, I missed
Yeah.
that. Okay, great. And my last question is, given the fact that you discovered vegetable oil is fuel, does that give you pause when it's sold on shelves in the grocery store as something to eat?
Well, I don't know. I don't really notice it, so.
Yeah.
But that might change.
Yeah.
I might think I know.
I would think twice about that. Very interesting stuff.
So why did you choose the vegetable oil over other oils that are available out there?
Well, don't know. I don't know why we picked it. Honestly, I mean,
You said it was the cheapest.
Yes,
so
it was the
You're trying to take
cheapest.
costs into effect. Some of the other oils are very expensive.
Yeah.
Would be How did you, you stated at the very beginning of the introduction, if you wouldn't mind just going over that again.
the introduction.
Yeah, like how you met Doug and how you
Well,
came to this.
So there is this, downtown there is a church called The River, and every Tuesday and Wednesday, a whole community of people go together and give them food and drink and get to know them and stuff. And my dad started to know him, and then I got to know him, and my dad told me about what he would do, I think, and then I learned and decided to do this experiment.
So how does the experiment change anything with homeless people?
Well, they'll be able to, like I said, they'll be able to stay warmer for a longer period of time. Because when we tested the rubbing alcohol, which Doug uses, it would only burn for 5 minutes. But we also saw this video where someone took a whole roll of toilet paper, put it in an aluminum can, and covered it in rubbing alcohol, and it would just burn for a very long time because there was a lot of fuel to be burned.
Thank you.
Rachel?